Good evening, everybody. Hi, Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen. It really is a great pleasure to see you all here. My name is Peter Saraga. I'm Honorary International Secretary of the Royal Academy of Engineering, and as I say, it's a great pleasure to welcome you here this evening for the Academy's third International Lecture. The International Lecture was created following a generous donation from the ERA Foundation to enable a UK audience to hear an international perspective from an eminent person with broad engineering interests. So you can imagine how delighted the Academy is that Dr. Mo Ibrahim, founder of Celtel International, and the Mo Ibrahim Foundation has accepted our invitation to deliver this year's lecture. In the Academy, we are particularly pleased to have this opportunity to hear from someone who is not only an outstanding innovator and businessman, but also an articulate and passionate advocate of Africa at a time when the Academy is focusing more of its work also in this region. Born in Sudan and educated in Egypt and then the UK, Dr. Ibrahim has had an extraordinary career encompassing technology, global business and philanthropy. He started out as an electrical engineer, taking these skills to BT and subsequently to his own companies. In 1998, he founded MSI Cellular Investments, which was later renamed Celtel International. The company now operates in 15 African countries under licenses that cover more than a third of the continent's population. In 2005, Celtel was sold to MTC Kuwait for $3.4 billion, making it one of Africa's most successful commercial ventures. In 2006, Dr. Ibrahim set up a foundation which runs two important initiatives aimed at improving the quality of governance in Africa. Firstly, the Ibrahim Prize for Achievement in African Leadership, the world's largest prize in monetary terms, is awarded to an outgoing African leader who has governed well and stood down peacefully. And the Ibrahim Index of African Governance provides civil society with a comprehensive and quantifiable tool to hold governments to account. Dr. Ibrahim's achievements have been recognized by many awards and honors. In 2007, he was awarded the GSM Association Chairman's Award, the telecommunication industry's highest accolade for helping the world to hear Africa's voice. In 2008, he was presented with the BNP Paribas Prize for Philanthropy and listed by Time magazine as one of the 100 most influential people in the world. More recently, he was named by a panel assembled by The Observer as the most influential black man in Britain. We look forward to hearing more about Dr. Ibrahim's story and his vision in the course of the next hour. So, Dr. Ibrahim, can I ask you to deliver your lecture?
Thank you. Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and I'm really grateful for the Royal Academy to invite me to speak to such a distinguished group of people. And I was so delighted to meet some of my old friends. I met Professor Sheman, our head of department in Birmingham here. I haven't seen him for 25 years, and it is so wonderful to see him. I mean, you almost failed me in my PhD exam, you know, but I forgive you. And of course, Sir Alan Raji, our chief executive, and I also saw our CFO, David. I mean, it's wonderful to really see such lovely people here today. I have only 50 minutes, and which is not much because I usually talk a lot, and so I'll try to discipline myself and get straight into my subject. And if I appear a little bit unsettled, unfortunately I slept only 1 hour. I was up to 6 o'clock in the morning, watching watching the fellow African sorting out America, hopefully. And so I said, what's a fantastic time, and Africa works even in America. Anyway, I'll try to do my best, and let me tell you first a few things about the Celtel story and the issue of technology there. In the late 80s and the 90s, two things happened. There was an important technological development, which is the cellular technology became viable. Mobile industry existed for so many years. Mobile telephony was there for ages, but it was a different kind of systems, and is only through frequency reuse cellular became. I don't know how many engineers are here, so I don't want to turn this into too much an engineering talk, but the reuse of frequencies meant that systems can have millions of customers now. That is a paradigm shift. Before cellular, UK had mobile telephony. There was about 12,000 people in what's called System 4, which was run by BT. And the fact it's called System 4, it tells you there were even 3 systems before that. So for a long time there have been mobile phones, but the cellular technology was totally changed. 11, 12,000, that's the total number of customers in the mobile industry at that time. It was £10 million a year industry. Imagine that, £10 million a year industry. It's now probably £10 million a minute industry, but to see what happened. Two things really happened. The technology advanced, ability now to really produce mass systems, which brought the prices of mobiles down, brought the airtime down, and enabled people to have this wonderful service. And accompanied with that, which is equally important, was the liberalization of the telecom industry. I see enough people here with white hair and some without hair like me, who will all remember that every country used to have one department of telecommunication which runs everything, and you get your black phone. Well, you can choose any color, as you said, as long as it's black. And that's it. Every country had its own GPO, General Post Office, you call them. And that's the postal and telecom services. That's it. Something happened in the 80s, started in the US. Back here was Thatcher, one of the few things which redeemed Madame Thatcher, was the introduction of the liberalization in the telecom industry. What liberalization did is, for the first time, allowed competition in the area of telecommunication. And the rest is history. I remember when I arrived here as a student many years ago, let us say, it cost me about £10 to phone home, to say hello. And that's why I very much identified with E.T. when I saw him, calling home. It was so expensive to call home. My stipend as a student was £120 a month, and I have to pay £10 to speak 3 minutes to my family. That was the situation at that time. You have to book the call 3 days in advance. It shows what really massive change technology produced here. So these twin advances of technology and liberalization really enabled it. And tell us something, technology is essential, but it's not enough if it's not accompanied by the right regulation and the right policies. These two must go hand in hand. Now, that sudden liberalization and sudden introduction at a massive scale of a new technology resulted in a major scramble for licenses across Europe, everywhere in the world. At that time, I was running a company called MSI, grand name actually, Mobile System International, which actually started in my living room. And what happened, I left academia, professor chairman, and I was a fellow at Birmingham University for research fellow for 6 or 7 years, and I was recruited by BT as a technical director for the first cellular company, Celnet, we introduced that, and I left BT in '89 to form my own company, which is another long story about why I did that. So MSI was a company focusing on consultancy and software. As I said, it started in my bedroom, or well, one of our rooms actually, and 100 pounds paid up capital, and that was a great success. We sold it 9 years later for the nice sum of $900 million, which was not bad. And but what happened is that we were operating all over the world. We had about 16 subsidiary companies, and we probably built or designed half the GSM networks in Europe. We did Tokyo, we did Osaka, we did Shanghai, we did Moscow, anyway. And because of that, we're very close to all the operators, because our customers were the operators. And we noticed this scramble for licenses, because we're actually doing the bidding work for all these international telecom operators. There is this frantic efforts everywhere, but everything was quiet on the African shores. Nobody was interested in Africa. And we asked people, you know, my customers, my friends, they said, you know, what, Africa, why? No. That surprised me, because the market was there. The market was there because of the failure of the so-called BTTs, or the Department of Telecom, the GBOs of Africa. There is no fixed telecommunication to talk of in Africa. I'll give you an example, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, I remember DRC, which is on the news nowadays, 60 million people, bigger than all of Western Europe put together, had 3,000 fixed lines. 3,000. Half of them were not working. That's the situation. There is no fixed telephony to talk about in Africa, especially sub-Saharan Africa. So you have the market. There's no competition. Then there's no demands for outrageous license fees like the greedy European governments. You remember the 5 billion they paid here by Vodafone and BT and all those guys. There's none of that in Africa. Yet people did not want to go and invest in Africa. The lack of interest clearly was due to an image problem. Rule of law, transparency, conflicts. We asked the question, is there a gap between reality and perception here? Is Africa really that bad? And I think we found the answer is yes, there is a gap. Because let's go to the root of the problem. I mean, let's talk about the media. Of course, the media focus on big stories. What are the big stories today in Africa? Fighting in DRC, fighting in Darfur, piracy in Somalia, then Mr. Mugabe. These are the 4 stories, and they change order every week according to action, you know. But we just keep recycling these 4 stories. But how many people know that Africa has 53 countries? 53 countries. What about the 49 other countries which are never mentioned? Because we have like 1 minute. I mean, if the news bulletin is 15 minutes, Africa will have probably 1 minute. So by the time they mention Zimbabwe or Somalia, it depends which one is the flavor of the day, your minute is up. So we move on to something else. That creates an impression in general that all what I hear about Africa is really bad news. Really bad news. I asked some friends, some European friends, over dinner, to say, when you hear the word Africa, what is the first sort of image come to your mind? A couple of nice people said, oh, lions and zebras. The rest, actually the majority of the people said starving kids, camps and starving kids, because that's what they see all the time on television. Of course, the first image come to you is that, and that creates your perception about Africa and the place. I asked those people, I said, you guys have been watching Peking Olympics. You notice that all the guys who won all the field events are African guys. You know, the fastest, the highest, the tallest, the one guys who won boxing, won. If Africa is full of sick kids, I mean, how those guys manage to be so powerful? Who are those guys who are scoring goals every Saturday in the Premier League here? These are all African players. So, you know, it doesn't sit with our perception of Africa as a sick society with sick and helpless people. I recall I was talking to one of our customers who was the international directors of one of the baby bells, who was in charge of their international cellular adventure, and they have built a lot of operations worldwide. We're having dinner here in London, in a restaurant not far from here. And I told him, John, we heard from Ugandan friends that they want somebody to come and build a cellular operation. And they'll give you a license for free. You're paying so much money here and everywhere, even in, I don't want to mention the name of the countries because I don't want to identify the company. Why did you go to Uganda and for free? You know, no license fees. Build a network. He said, Mo, you crazy or what? You drunk. He said, you think I can go and recommend to my board to build or to invest in a country run by a criminal like Idi Amin? I said, Idi Amin left Uganda 15 years ago. And he said, oh, really? I said, yes. But then he turned me and said something really very interesting. He said, okay, I am the international director on the board. My company is a southern company. Some of our board members don't have passports, never left the United States. And I am the hippie kind of guy in that board because I'm an internationalist. I speak foreign languages, unheard of. And if I think Idi Amin is still in power after 15 years, what do you think my board will think that Ugandans live up in the trees? You know? And that was a very powerful statement, I must say. So that set us really thinking. And what really we sort of came to conclusion that there's a major gap between perception and reality. And once there is a gap between perception and reality, there is a wonderful business opportunity. Absolutely. So that's how we decided to go into our African adventure. Now, we were a consultancy company, yes, we know the technologies, but we're not an operator. And that's a completely different business model. So we sat together and said, okay, how are we going to handle this? How can I become a successful operator in Africa? We needed few things to be put in place. And we were aware of the image problem. And what we said, okay, it's going to be difficult to raise money for this. Clearly, we'll have to get all our money together and start this, and we hope that we can show that our business model works, and then we can get extra funding. The problem with telecom infrastructure or any infrastructure projects, they are very cash hungry. And you can ask my CFO there. So we thought, okay, we'll have to depend on ourselves, tighten our belts, and do the job. Then we said, okay, we also need to have a very, very credible board for the company, because that will use the board to face the outside world, and has to be a very powerful board. So we got a very powerful board for the company. I recall I got people like Sir Jerry Wendt. If you recall, Sir Jerry Wendt is the man who founded Vodafone, the chief executive of Vodafone, first chief executive. We got actually Sir Alan Rudge here, who was at that time just coming off BT, who was deputy chief executive from British Telecom. And we got the ex-chief executive of Melicom. We had three big telecom guys. We went and got some statesmen. We got Lord Pryor, who was Secretary of State for Northern Ireland here, chairman of Conservative Party for a number of years, chairman of GE. Very respectable man. We got Dr. Salim Salim, who was Secretary General of the African Union for 12 years. This becomes the two statesmen of the company. One African, one British, both respectable, and this became the conscience of the company. Then we start to build on that as some investors. So we got somebody from CDC, the Commonwealth Development Corporation, which was one of our co-shareholders. We got somebody from FMO, the Dutch equivalent, and the German equivalent, and OPEC, which is American equivalent to CDC. I had a board of 12 people. And then we said we must, so that was a very, really powerful, IFC also, the World Bank was asked to put a director on the board. And that was a very powerful board we had. And I used to joke with Sir Jerry Wendt and tell him that our board actually is better than his Vodafone board. And he enjoys that actually. And anyway, so we had that board, and then we empowered the board. We said we need to develop a governance model. We need to have the best possible standard of governance in this company. And we want to do that, not because we are, pretending to be preachers or just to survive. In order to survive, we'll have to have a good board, we'll have to have the transparent company, we'll have to be above board. Otherwise, we're dead. How are we going to get finance in that company? How are we going to get credibility? So, from day one, we made a statement, we said, not a single dollar. And that became a slogan throughout the company, which is exactly saying, we will not pay a single dollar and bribe anybody to anywhere. And that was not just a slogan, because all the companies have this. Shell, BB, Vodafone, everybody have similar policies. The question, do you implement it? What do you do to implement this? And that's the problem. We have done something very interesting. We decided that any chief executive of our companies cannot spend more than $30,000 without a board signature. The board have to approve any check more than $30,000. And people said, you are crazy, how are you going to do that? Actually, we did it. And it never hampered our work. The board was so involved, I had the fax number of every board member at home, at work, at holiday home. Anytime we needed to communicate with the board, they were there. So that was a very interesting model of operation, and that's the way to fight corruption. And by the way, I have also one or two things to say about corruption, because a lot of people always talk about Africa and corruption almost in the same breath. And I have issues with that, because any corrupt African official must have a counterpart, a corrupt few European business people. Otherwise, I mean, he cannot corrupt himself by, you need to have somebody. Yeah, a simple mathematical equation. And so we must have the same number of corrupt people in Africa and in Europe. Correct? So where are the corrupt guys in Europe? I ask that question everywhere, everywhere. In Berlin, in Copenhagen, in Paris, everywhere. I ask. After the year, I think, 1999 or 2000, under pressure from OECD, the European countries, one after another, very reluctantly introduced anti-corruption laws. Very reluctantly. The Americans had the Foreign Corrupt Act for years, and they have been complaining that their companies are disadvantaged compared with European companies. And they said, no, 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 no. Until OECD then had a big issue with them and had a big fight, and they started to introduce it since then. So corruption has been, until 2000, it was called business expenses. Tax deductible. Okay? But anyway, it's illegal for some years now, 6 or 7 years maybe. So ask everywhere, can you please tell me, have you prosecuted anybody in your country for corruption in Africa? The answer, no. Not in Berlin, not in Paris, not in London, not in Stockholm, not a single person in Europe was prosecuted for corruption. Are you aware of that? Then the following question, either there is no corruption, and then please shut up, don't talk about African corruption, or there is rife corruption, and we're happy to talk about African corruption, but we're very happy to our business people to indulge in these corrupting practices, because maybe it is a job for the boys. It's, we invoke things. What did Tony Blair say? Oh, national security. Okay? Is that what we call it here in Britain? National, because for national security. We had a case. The first case actually by the SFO. I don't know, the SFO has been operating for how many years? That's the first case they put together, but because of national security, war and terror, because of war and terror. So many crimes committed in the name of war and terror. So there is a lot of hypocrisy when we talk about corruption. And it's really time to shine the light, and we say this is bad practice here and there. The people who are not prosecuting should shut up. Get off the soapbox and don't lecture others, because it's just hypocrisy if we speak and we don't. Anyway, so those are these issues we had to face, and we had to take a clear position, and I told you exactly what we have done. On the model of governance, I recall we had 12 big beasts in our board, and I had only one single seat on that board. Although at the first 3 years of the life of the company, I had something like 70% of the shareholding. I had only one seat in a board of 12. Probably everybody in that board was senior to me. I didn't have my brother, I didn't have my wife, I didn't have my kids, I didn't have my mistress. No. That was good corporate governance. I don't say to the board, you want to fire me anytime. I have only one vote. But that was the level of transparency which we practiced in Celtel, an African company. And we challenge everybody, show us a company in Europe has that level of transparency. You all know, Murdoch controlled his empire with 27%, with his son running Sky here and his wife running China and his other son doing something else. That's the normal way of Western capitalism, isn't it? So we exceeded that in our, we little African company. We're not a listed company even, not like those guys. But that's the level of transparency, and we had to do that because that was the only way to attract funding into the company. The only way to give comfort to investors that this is a very, very clean company. And the investors came, and thanks for them, we survived because we were spending a lot of money building the infrastructure. We built 15 countries. And that is a cash-hungry operation. Now, we have to fund using equity. And David will tell you, I mean, in the life of the company, we ran the company for 7 years before we sold it. We had 9 rounds of finance, all through equity. Imagine the whole finance department is doing nothing other than raising funds every like 8 or 9 months. It was tough. And why it was tough? Because banks will not lend money to African company. It's very interesting. We could not finance the company through the banks, through loans. We couldn't. In February 2005, 3 months before we sold the company, the maximum debt we managed to have in the company was $190 million. $190 million. For that, we have to mortgage all our assets in 15 countries. And $14 million of our own money in the bank. All that was mortgaged with the banks. The same company, 2 months later, was sold for $3.4 billion. What does that tell us? The same credit committees which authorized all this crap in the United States and created the massive financial tsunami. They're looking at a company in Africa which was profitable, year on year profitable, which has a backing of very decent shareholders. And I listed to you what our shareholders. It got excellent management. We are profitable. And the maximum debt we can get is $190 million, less than 5% of the value of the company. The same guys were giving people 120% mortgages on their homes in inflated markets. That tell you something about those gentlemen sitting at the credit committees in the banks and what is the problem there. What Celtel achieved at the end, I think what mobile phones did to Africa was much beyond our hopes. Africa actually leapfrogged the fixed networks. Today there are 200 million mobiles in Africa. Africa is about 900 million people, by the way. There are 200 million mobiles. Amazing. GDP is estimated to rise by somewhere between 1.2 to 1.8% per annum for every 10% of penetration of the population. You can see that the average growth rates in Africa is between 5 and 6%. Quite a good chunk of that was thanks to the mobile industry. Our company had 10,000 jobs, direct jobs. These are highly trained. We don't have servants, we don't have cooks, we don't have laborers. It's all IT jobs because it's IT technology. It's the same system you have here. What we have, the same GSM network. We buy equipment from Ericsson or whatever, the same stuff here. And this is the people who work in our operations. But the real progress was not in 10,000 direct jobs. It was in what happened around the company. We have over 160,000 points of sale. What is a point of sale? Somebody set up a kiosk by the road and he buy the scratch card from us in bulk and he sell them. These 200 million, not all my customers, unfortunately, but these 200 million guys, every morning they wake up to buy scratch cards. And imagine the kind of business created there. 160,000 points of sale for our network alone. Because franchises usually do one network or another. These are 160,000 business people. That's, I think, is then we have people who are maintain our generators, maintain our batteries, build our towers, all these things done by African companies. We improved greatly the business environment. Without telecommunication, you cannot have viable business. We were very proud to be the largest taxpayer in half of our countries. We pay our taxes on time. Finally, what surprised us is that we found that the mobile phone was a wonderful, wonderful tool for democracy. Any country which had a high penetration of mobile phone in Africa will never allow any election to be stolen. Why? Because people are connected. People are able to relate to each other immediately the results of voting in every booth, everywhere. People are able to take photographs of the lists of the voters, the list of the results in every station and transmit it to each other. Even before the government knows the result, those guys have the results. This is the value of the mobile. That's why elections in Zimbabwe, you remember in Zimbabwe, for 2 months the government could not announce the results. And at the end they announced them. And they were the correct results. They were not fake. Because you could not fiddle with them. There's no way. Because the data is everywhere. People have the evidence of each polling station. After 2 months, they couldn't forge or falsify the data. That is something. So that was Celtel story. We sold Celtel in 2005, and obviously we made quite a bit of money there. And personally, the question after that was what to do with this money. But before I move there, maybe I'll just give you a 1-minute flavor of what Celtel in Africa. Can I have the video, please? Thank you. So that was just a feel about what is Celtel. And as I said, that was success stories. We made decent profit. On average, we returned about 8.5 times for our investors. I think the average period for those investors was about 3 years. That's over 100% IRR. That's an amazing return for the investors. But those are people who took the risk. And we're very happy that most of those actually, can we? We're very happy because most of the people anyway are shareholders with the development agencies. So the British government made £200 million profit, which they promised they're going to invest it again in Africa. The Dutch government, the German government, the OPEC, the American government. And this all, I hope, went back again to the development in Africa. So it is a good thing for everybody. Personally, I decided to really return the money, or let's say the most of it. I need to keep a little for myself. And I really decided to give back the money because I think I really don't need it. I have it, it's okay. So the question I had was to whom and how. To whom was very easy. Obviously has to go back to Africa because that's where I made my money, and I better give it back to the people who gave it to me in the first place. And secondly, of course, because Africa is the most needy place for assistance or any kind of assistance. So that was a very easy decision, it doesn't take a minute. The second difficult question was how. What is the best way to give, to return money? If you have a little bit of money, you want to give it. And we are business people, you know, I'm essentially a businessman, and I really want to have the biggest return on my investment. So at first, the idea of, you know, leasing some aeroplanes and taking some baby food to Darfur, or, you know, some blankets to DRC or whatever. Noble ideas, wonderful. I know somebody here from Oxfam, you know, I cannot say anything. It's great. But I don't think it solved the problem. And for me, it was clear the problem in Africa really is governance, political governance. And as we discovered in business, there is premium in good governance. Why our company succeed? I think it was because of good governance. Why attracted a very high price? We were sold the company at 8.5 times EBITDA. The market at that time was 5.5 times EBITDA. Why? Because it's a very, very, very clean company. Everybody in the industry knew it is the most clean company. Everybody knew that. How we got our licenses? Have we paid our taxes? Did we give anybody a bribe? How we run our business is absolutely clear. That actually produced a major premium. And actually it is interesting that we have a professor in our board from Harvard Business School who was also head of Bismarck Venture Capital, who's an investor in the company. And they're teaching our business case in all classes, at every single class at Harvard Business School. And he was telling me the other day, do you know what? The angle we are teaching your business case is that good governance base. We want our new future generation of American business people to know clean companies work. There is a premium. And that's a very important message. Anyway, for me, I thought really it is political governance is equally important. And why to think why Africa has gone backwards? You go to Africa, I don't know how many of you have been around Africa. It's a very rich place. It's amazingly rich place. Your plane come to Antibes and you look to Antibes and you look and you say, oh, this is like Switzerland. Beautiful lakes, beautiful green. Why this place is poor? Why our people are poor? We are poor because of bad governance. That's it. And so we decided to tackle that issue. So that's why we launched our foundation. I'll be very brief here because I think we spend a lot of time on Celtel, which is not fair for the foundation, which I love more actually than Celtel. But what we decided, how we're gonna, what we're gonna do? We said, okay, first we need to define what is governance, and that's why we decided to produce this index of governance, which will measure the performance of governance. We have like 59 measures to define what is good governance. And we have a team at Kennedy School of Government working with us. We have about 12 African professors working with us to publish an annual massive document which tabulates and ranks all the countries in Africa exactly below the performance of their governance, because the civil society need to know what is going on exactly. So that's the first part. Second one was a prize, which is, you probably heard about it, and we think it's important to really bring forward those unsung heroes, people like Chisano or people like Mukhai, whom I'm sure 99% of people sitting in this room, you are the most intelligent, some of the most intelligent people in London here, never heard of before. But all of you, I'm sure, are aware of Mugabe and Idi Amin and those guys. We need to bring those young heroes forward and to say thank you very much for what you're doing. That's why we did launch the foundation. To brief this, there's some nice videos. Launching a foundation like that is always fought with political problems, because immediately people say, what is in it for you guys here? Why are you doing this? We have very cynical tabloids. So it was important for us to line up really some powerful African public opinion behind us, figures, etc., to really stop any initial attack on us from the tabloids, which can derail what we're doing. And so it's just an idea. I hope if somebody to see how we did it to get this foundation and to get up and running. Can we have the second video, please? Nothing is as important as ensuring the quality of governance and good leadership in Africa. An African leader is faced with major challenges. How to take his people out of poverty, how to deal with issues of educating many young people, sorting out conflicts, dealing with health issues, water, electricity. Their success is crucial. It's crucial for the lives of millions of people in Africa.
We need a leadership that will create a bond between those who lead and the people who have given their trust in elections.
Leadership is important everywhere, but especially so in Africa. The tasks facing leaders in Africa are challenging, and the lives and well-beings of many millions of people depend upon the performance of those leaders. It follows that we should strive to recognize and reward those successful leaders who are able to deliver tangible results for their citizens.
Our African continent is rich in the diversity of its people. It is rich in its resources, and it is rich in its potential. Our continent is beginning to fulfill this promise.
I am Mo Ibrahim. I'm a Nubian from Sudan, so I'm an African. I'm a businessman who was involved in building telecom infrastructure in Africa through Celtel, which was a success story. I think we proved the point that people can do clean business in Africa, help create jobs, create prosperity, build the infrastructure, and also can be profitable.
Good governance and democracy are central to Africa's development. Without them, it will be hard, if not impossible, for any African countries to reach the Millennium Development Goals by 2015. And that is why the mission of the Mo Ibrahim Foundation is so important. Thanks to Mo's vision, the foundation can contribute to the growing movement to build honest and enlightened African leadership.
Mo Ibrahim has established the Mo Ibrahim Foundation to develop criteria for good governance, stimulate a public debate, and challenge the continent's leaders to set the global benchmark on this issue.
We really want to support the African leadership, and we want to reward achievement. We want to celebrate success of African leadership. We are going to offer the largest prize in history, the largest prize in the world, for those successful leaders who manage really to take these people forward. Nothing is more important than that. And the important thing here is that we are African, and this is an African foundation. It is an African money. This is Africa doing its own business. It's time for us to really look back into Africa and do something ourselves. We cannot just sit there and expect the world to come and do things for us. And so it is in that context we are launching really our foundation.
It's wonderful that somebody of the caliber of Mo Ibrahim, a successful businessman, feels so strongly about Africa and about leadership in Africa.
I wish the Foundation much success in its important work, and I thank Mo Ibrahim for the leadership that he is demonstrating, the prize for which will be one we can all share, a better and brighter future.
May your initiative inspire and celebrate the best of African leadership and equip future leaders with the knowledge and experience they will need.
The index is a document about 350 pages of academic papers and the tables. This is like summary, final scores. It was launched in London. This year we launched the 08 index in Addis Ababa. Underneath these numbers you can go and find, you can interrogate the database. It's all there. It's in English, French, Arabic, Swahili and Portuguese, all the languages of the African Union, to enable any African to access and download the data and to look at what you're doing. Then we had our prize ceremony, our winner Chisano last year. We did it in the Library of Alexandria. That's where it was one of the 7 wonders of the world. The lighthouse was just outside the library, 150 meters high. You know, Africa, the dark continent, sending light to Europe. The fact we had a great library in Alexandria, there was none in Europe. I think it's an interesting symbolism here to really lift the spirit of our African friends and say, look guys, you know, we've done.
Who would like to go first? Please, in the middle there.
Can I try it first? Yeah.
Yes.
When I was...
So who you are, please.
My name is Ibrahim Gagliardone. I'm doing my PhD at the LSE in Media and Communication. I spent some time in Africa, and one of the things that I found amazing about telecommunication in Africa was that while crossing between a country like Tanzania into Uganda, I didn't have to receive all these annoying messages because of Mo Ibrahim and Celtel created this one network, which is the only example in the world of a network that crosses the borders. And I find it extremely interesting. I would like you to articulate more on the concept. It is also how telecommunication redesigned borders that have been created artificially in colonial times, also linking together population that shouldn't be divided.
Well, thank you very much, really, for bringing a very, very interesting point. As I mentioned, we operate, now I think we operate in 16, I say we, I mean I have nothing to do with the company, but I'm still used to say we. You know, you have a child, you never disown it, I guess. We operate in 16 countries, and we decided that it costs nothing. All these networks are connected. We should treat all of this as one African network. So introduce the concept of one network, which actually more important. I mean, you don't have to pay any roaming charges. This is something which the Commission for Telecommunication in Europe is fighting tooth and nail with Vodafone and all the operators here to reduce the roaming charges. At the moment, and I travel a lot in Europe, for a few seconds you pay £1. Just for you to pick up a message, £1 roaming charge, and it's free. And it's very interesting that a lot of things happening in Africa before they have payment by phone. Many places in Africa now we have payment by phone. To pay using your phone, you can send money to your mother. We needed to do that. You know, your mother lives in a small village in extreme part of DRC or Sudan or whatever. You want to make sure she is on the phone, so you can fill in her phone. You charge her phone, you know, from your phone, and it is some interesting concepts over there. But this concept of one network, I think, is a wonderful concept. Unites Africa. You know, if that's for prepaid, not even subscriber, for prepaid, you just move anywhere across, and you are not penalized. You can still continue to use your scratch card at no extra charges.
Patrick.
Patrick Darling, Chairman of the British Association for the Advancement of Science. Mo, congratulations on all the wonderful stuff you've done, and particularly on your philanthropy and what you've done. I was interested in your index. What effect has the index, or the publication of the index, had on the laggards that are down at the bottom? Is there any indication that it has any effect whatsoever, or are they more than happy to with their corruption to take more money than your prizes offered from the rest of their citizens?
That's a very good question, and actually this one question is asked many times, actually, because you see the point is this: we are not reformers. We are not interested in the rotten guys. So we are not trying to tempt a corrupt leader to say, no, don't steal money, come and take my 5 million. Because of course he can make 500 million. So we are not interested in those people. So we don't want to see the prize as an attempt to buy or to clear the conscience of those corrupt leaders. The prize are for the people who are doing the good work, regardless of the price. Chissano left the office before we start the prize. But he unified his country. He extended his hand to his enemies. There was a civil war in the country. And I hope Mr. Bashir does the same. And we will finish this tragedy in Darfur, to learn how to get over grievances and to extend your hand to have peace in your country, to build the country. So it is those people, this is our constituency, the good guys. And for the good guys, we say those are heroes. Why are celebrating those people? You know, to be honest, how many people here know Chissano? Not many people. And here a man needs to be honored. And Mohai, how many people know Mohai? Who is Mohai? Nobody knows him. So I hope after Alexandria, this party Alexandria will be transmitted live. Last year we had 13 African countries took it live. This year we hope to have maybe 20 or more to take it live. Maybe CNN takes bits and pieces. Slowly, slowly we're building momentum because we want people to recognize and honor those people. That's more important than the money.
Question over there, in the back.
Hello, my name is Mark Hudson. I was born and grew up in East Africa and set up a business in Uganda. My question is about generational change in Africa. We've seen what we hope is an important generational change in the United States. How much hope can we ascribe to a similar generational change occurring in the governments of Africa, bringing in people with perhaps a different mindset and a different education and skill base, and how important could that be?
That's a good question. I really think a lot of changes taking place right under our noses now in Africa. Africa is changing so fast. I can remember comparing what I've seen now with 10 years ago. There is a new breed of young people, educated young people, who actually, when they come here to study London Business School, LSE, whatever they go to, Imperial College, they want to go back. They don't want to stay here. They want to go back. In Celtel, actually, it was very interesting. We had very few expats because we managed to get a lot of wonderful, highly educated African people who were stuck here, who wanted a chance to go back. They were senior people who could not find senior jobs back home, and suddenly, here is an international company offering the same international rates everywhere, and we thought, oh wow, I can be paid the British prices or the salaries, but in Kenya or in Zimbabwe or whatever. So people were delighted to go back and serve in those people are changing the landscape. Internet is changing the landscape. Mobile phone changing the landscape. Satellite television is changing the landscape. This world is connected. You cannot imagine what happens when the world is connected. Suddenly, you cannot lie. You have to remember, 10 years ago, in any African country, there was one newspaper owned by the government. There was one radio station run by the government. There was one TV station owned and run by the government. That's your only source of information. That's it. Nothing else. All that's finished. All that is gone. So changes are sweeping across Africa. What happened in Kenya and Zimbabwe? I meet a lot of people say, oh, look, things are bad, what happened? I said, this is wonderful. That's what I've been waiting for. 10 years ago, somebody would have stolen the election in Kenya. And nothing would have happened. They just took the elections. They will come here, they will get knighted and invited to Buckingham Palace. And no problem. No problem. Now, you cannot do that. You cannot do that. Don't forget, Mugabe was knighted here. After the massacres of Matibeland, Mugabe was knighted here. He came here, he was honored. Now, this cannot happen. We're all changing. You changing, we changing. We are all connected now. We know the facts. Nobody can play games or hide things from us. So, and that is why we are moving to a much better world. That's what I think is happening everywhere. Technology changing the world around us. It's connecting us as human beings.
Gordon.
Gordon Conway from Department for International Development, Dr. Ibrahim. Pick up on that last point about technology. I mean, this cell phone revolution in Africa has been quite extraordinary. And as you say, partly because the fixed line system was so appalling, but also because of the sheer inventiveness of Africans to making use of cell phones in ways which we in the North hadn't even thought about. Can you think of a technology now that might do the same? I'll make one suggestion, and that's photovoltaic cells. But maybe you've got another suggestion. Somebody young here will pick that up and also make a company that sells for $3 billion.
Gordon, I'm still young too. If I have this idea, I'm going to go and do it. Come on.
I'm Nikki Folayan from the Association for Black Engineers, UK. I wanted to ask about maintenance culture in Africa.
About?
Maintenance, how the structures, the infrastructure that you have in Africa, how is it going to be maintained? Because I think one of the major problems that Africa has at the moment is that the structures that were available in the past haven't been maintained properly. And continuity is a problem in Africa. Second question is about how companies, because I work in a company and we do a lot of construction work and some in Africa, and I find that the standards of European structures, for example, if we're building a bridge in Europe, it's different to the standards that we have in Africa. How, have you got any solutions to actually resolving the issue of standards in Africa and standards in Europe?
Right, and please, I'm not trying to pretend, of course I'm very much pro-Africa, but what I'm telling you is the truth. To start with the issue of maintenance, this is not white elephant project, this is not like a, something witting up. This is a network run by companies, owned by shareholders. Then the company who owned our company is listed in the market. It's growing its pace by 40%. Celtel is moving at that rate. We sold it in 2005 for 3.4. Today it's worth $10 billion. Do you think somebody have $10 billion and going to leave it to the K sister? This is a huge business. Okay, so that, because this is an ongoing, Now, as far as the quality, you cannot. I don't know, have you used cell phones in Africa? Have you been to Africa recently? I tell you, last year I was in New York, and somebody asked a question like that, like you, but it was an American New Yorker. And I thought to the lady, I swear to you, my network in Ouagadougou performs better than your network in New York, and more advanced. My American friends were laughing and said, they think I'm joking. Then one lady stood up and said, Dr. Ibrahim is right. I was in Ouagadougou last month. Wonderful. I never dropped calls. Said, I never dropped this. My system went, same GSM network. I went and roamed there straight away. I never dropped in Ouagadougou. People say, where is this Ouagadougou? Why New York? I said, honestly, if you try to make phone calls, you use the same network. And of course, we are helped because the cities are smaller than New York or whatever. But we design all these networks in Europe. We know how to design networks. We design Ouagadougou very well, and it works. What's the problem?
I think there's a question about yes, too.
I'm Kobe Adams, a student at London Business School. My question is about the whole not a single dollar theme that the company Celtel adopted. It was a very new thing for an African company at the time to take such a position, and I'm sure it was met with a shock and surprise by a lot of the government administrators. How much more difficult do you think it was for Celtel to conduct its operations working with this mindset?
That's is really, really interesting question. At the beginning, it was difficult. It was difficult. I remember one day, Sir Alan Raj became our chief executive. We have the habit of demoting our board members, and for his sins, he started as a board member and then became chief executive, but still board member, I think. Yes. You remember, Alan, you went to X country, no naming. We just paid for a license fee in that country. And Alan took a plane to go there to sign the final agreements with the minister. And he arrived at the office of the minister and found 20 people sitting there. Oh, you are Mr. Alan Raj of Celtel. Oh, we are waiting for you since morning. So, who are you? Oh, I am Hajji, I'm XY, business people, and everybody say, okay, before you meet the minister, we need to cut this pie. And I said, what pie? So, well, your butlers. I said, well, I have no butlers here. No, we are doing this, and then he discovered that the whole thing is, and he did not meet the minister. He went back to the airport and came back, and he came to me and said, "Mo, sorry, throw away this license," and this guy had to. We paid the money, we lost it, but that's the position. You have to live. If you want to do that, you must make a stand. Okay, we write off our investment, but he is not going to compromise. Now, in 4 African countries, we went to court against the government. 3 of them, we won every single case. In 3 countries. In the 4th countries, we were still in court when we sold the company. And that was unfortunately my country, Sudan. And I think they're still in court. They actually ended up buying their side of the thing. But look, it's a bit of heartache. You just have to do it. But what you need, you cannot tell, you put a man in the field, you say, you are my chief executive in Nigeria. You run the company in Nigeria. And you don't protect your people there because they are out there. What you need is to protect them. And that was a simple thing because they call the chief executive, they threaten him, they say, look, give me this. And he say, okay, you want me, how much you want? I'm going to write, I have to write to my board to get permission to give you the money you want, whatever. You write here, how much you want. I say, you're going to write to your board to tell them? You say, yes, because I have no control over this. I cannot do it. I have no money to give you. The board authorized the money. And we have 12 beasts sitting. We have big guys. Actually, that's why we had those guys sitting there in the board. Because you say, oh, you have Lord Prior there, you have this, there's that, you know. So you cannot do it. Then I go and say, look, I have a wonderful gift for this country. We're going to build a beautiful school here, and we're going to call it after your daughters. You come and open it. Or we're going to dig a well here. And we're going to do this here. Because we do things for community. I don't care what we call it. You know, we can call it after his wife or whoever, if it's a bad man there. I don't mind. But we do it for the country because that's part of our social responsibility. But that's how we make our peace. But after a while, everybody knows. Nobody bothers you. And that raises the question, if everyone took a stance, those guys will not bother you. And then what happens? Actually, we had best financial performance. Why? Because the money was not seeping from the company. Because if you start paying, you never stop. The finance minister will come to you, the minister of telecom will come, then the regulator will come, then the prime minister, then the president. Next year, have a different cabinet, and those guys will come. So, but if you take a stand, what we found actually, people were not inherently corrupt. And it raised the issue, do you actually go and corrupt people? Yeah?
There's a question there.
Hi, Philip Walker from LBS. Dr. Ibrahim, some of my colleagues and I are very interested in investment vehicles which funnel capital from North America, Europe, into Africa. So particularly interested in hearing your story on Celtel and the troubles you had in sourcing capital, equity, and debt from those markets. I'd like to hear a little bit more about your experiences since you had your first round of raising capital. Have you seen an evolution in the markets with regards to Africa, and especially with regards to current credit crisis? What can we expect going forward?
Well, I think things are improving. There's no question about it. And I hope to think that Celtel helped change perception also, even among bankers. Many of those bankers are our friends now. They say, oh, I wish we dealt with you guys, you know. You did not explain to us quite well what is the well, the credit committee, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, but things are easing. And actually we noted that actually the inflation, I mean the banks, or the financial sector in Nigeria, for example, was very expensive. Shares went up, telecom companies in Africa became the most expensive in the world. relatively speaking, given, as a multiple of EBITDA. It's amazing because suddenly people started to pencil in growth. That was never done before. People never penciled in growth in valuating companies in Africa. Now they do it. That pushed the stakes, so things are moving forward. Will it continue? I'm very worried about the crunch and what's going to happen now, because a lot of things are on fire now. How that will play out, I really cannot predict, but I'm worried.
I'm sure that lots of people. I'll just take one last question from the back, though, because we're running out of time.
Can I be a little bit rude, Dr. Moore, and actually ask 3 questions in one, if I can? The first one is something I know you've talked about before. It's about the fact that when you cashed out, it wasn't just you cashing out. That's quite a lot of the company did, and I wanted you to talk about that. The second one is why did you go for a trade sale as opposed to an IPO? And the third one is, do you have any regrets with regards to Celtel?
Right. The first one is what was cashed out on the sale. I always believed in that all the employees of the company should really become partners in the business. We don't succeed. I don't succeed by myself. I succeed because of those guys. We all succeed together or fail together. So in the first company, MSI, we had everybody with the shareholders. When we sold the company, I said for $900 million, $350 million, over 1/3, was owned by the employees. And that doesn't include myself, our employees. We created 50 millionaires. Celtel, I think we created about 100 millionaires. Is that correct? We had about 100 millionaires. Something wonderful also was being done by the party shareholders because of the grant of options for people, the timing of the sale. There meant some people don't have shares in the company. The shareholders, out of their pockets, cashing, they put out, you remember, 6 months or 9 months salary to every employee in the company as a thank you. That is the spirit. And it's amazing. At the board meeting, it didn't take us 2 minutes to get approval for all those guys. And these are hard-nosed capitalists. Okay? And we said, look, we need to say those people have really did not make money because for some reason they didn't have shares in the company. And we said, okay. And I think we get like an average of 9 months salary to every employee who don't have shares. The guys who have shares made a lot of money, and you ask him. So that's the second one about. But listen, I made money because he made money. You understand? And I made more money because he made money. That is the way to think about it. And we used to say in the boardroom, you never, as a shareholder, lose money by giving shares to your employees. You never lose money. Yes, you dilute yourself, but you make more money. That's what we believed. The second question was? Right. We actually were going for an IPO. We hired Goldman Sachs and Citigroup to take us to IPO. And we received unsolicited about 6 offers at the time. And what the dynamics of this was the following, actually. We had about 14 shareholders, besides the employees. All the employees, vast majority of the employees were shareholders, and the 14 shareholders. Each body have maybe 3 or 4% or 2%, and I had about 20% or 25%, don't recall how much. The problem is some of those shareholders, quite a bit of them, were funds. Those guys put their money with us, and it's 4 years later, 5 years later, they need to cash out now. And that became a problem for us because they need to sell the shares. If we went for an IPO, we're going to have a major overhang. And so that was a difficult situation facing the board. Then this offer came to the company. I think when it was offers which carried like 30% premium over the IPO. So there is a lot of pressure on those people to say, look, we need to cash out now because it's wonderful, I made a lot of money and we need to cash out now. I really took almost a passive situation. I didn't mind either. The IPO would have been a wonderful story to list an African company for the first time, true African company in London, and that would have been great. At the same time, I have those shareholders who supported us, and I'm very grateful for them. And I cannot go against them. And I said, look, whatever you want, I'm fine. Yes, I regret selling the company, but but it's okay. There's time for everything. There's time to make money. There's time to spend money.
Well,
yeah,
as I say, I think we have to bring this part of the session to a close. The Royal Academy at the moment has an objective to bring engineering to the centre of society. I can think of no better example of someone who's really done that. I think there's some lessons for us in doing the same, doing things in this country from the way the things we've done in Africa. As you said, it's not one-way traffic. So, thank you so much again. Thank you all for your questions. It's been a fantastic evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.